Hi, welcome to Lessons in ParraDice. I'm Matt Parra. We are going to be taking a look at the 2 to 6 player game Up or Down, designed by Wolfgang Kramer and Michael Kiesling and published by Capstone Games. This video was not sponsored. In Up or Down, players are going to be building elevators, trying to have them ascend or descend, all the while adding floors to their elevators and trying to color coordinate them. So, let's go to the table and start the setup. To start the setup, determine how many players you are playing with, and if you are playing a short or long game. Then consult the table on the front of the rulebook to determine which cards are needed. For purposes of this tutorial, I will be setting up a short 4-player game. According to the table, we will play with cards 1 through 78. At this point, return all cards not used to the game box. In this example, cards 79 through 126 go back into the box. Next, give the remaining cards a good shuffle. At this point, we can set the game box aside. It is no longer needed. Go ahead and deal out 3 cards to each player. Then we will deal out 6 face-up cards, creating our market. Make sure that these cards are placed in a circle, clockwise, in ascending order. Once you have done this, the remaining cards are split into 2 decks of roughly even size. One is flipped face up, and one stays face down, in the middle of the market. Your group will now choose a first player. Starting with the first player and going in clockwise order, players will take their turns. Players' turns consist of 4 different steps. These steps are: play a card from your hand to the display in between 2 of the face-up 6 cards. Then they will take one of those 2 cards that they played their card between, and then they will play that card to their play area. Last, they will draw a card from either of the 2 decks, either the face-up or the face-down deck. When playing a card from your hand, you must play it between 2 cards in the display. For this example, I will choose to play the 11 card in between the 6 and the 24. I will then take the 6 card and place it in my play area. It is generally best to start with as low or as high as possible for your elevators. Then I will rearrange the deck so it's still in ascending order going clockwise. After this, I will then take a card from either of the draw decks. In this case, I draw a card from the face down and I put it in my hand. Now that we have seen a full turn, let's focus on the play area to learn how future turns will shape my elevators. After my first turn, I will now have multiple decisions on where to place future cards going forward. For the purposes of this example, let's say I drew a 16 for my second turn. I now have 2 options. I can create a new elevator with that 16, or I can continue my previous existing elevator. Players are allowed up to 3 elevators at any given time. For this example, I'm going to choose to play the card on top of my previous elevator. This will commit the elevator now to going up. Now every single card I play on this elevator going forward has to be in ascending order played on top of the previous card. So the next card I play will have to be greater than 16. You are not allowed to tuck cards under previous cards. Let's take this time to skip ahead a little bit to see how a future placement works in my play area. As you can see, I now have the maxed out 3 elevators allowed. At this point, I have a pretty solid elevator going over here that looks like it can continue for a little bit. And we have the previous elevator that we started at the start of our turns here. But as you see off to the left, we do have an elevator that is very spaced out and doesn't have much more room to grow. At any point in time on a player's turn, they can turn over one of their elevators, turning over all cards involved in that elevator, and set this face down pile aside. Now from this point forward, at the end of the game, they will score 1 point for each face down card. But most importantly, this allows them to start a new elevator. I drew this too from the market on my turn, which is a very good place to start an elevator going up. So, in this example, I was able to replace an elevator that I was not happy with a new elevator, all while collecting endgame points. Players will continue taking turns until both decks have been totally drawn. At this point, players will have 3 cards left in their hands. Play is going to continue until all 3 cards from every single player have been played and there are no more cards remaining except for the 6 in the middle. Then the game ends immediately and players move over to final scoring. I would like to take this time to explain a rule that I left out earlier. As you see, cards are in ascending order clockwise. But what happens if I have a card that I want to play that's lower than the starting card or higher than the last card? Simply, you just play the card in between those two. So a card can be played from your hand to this area here if it is less than the lowest card or higher than the highest card, at which case you would still choose one of the 2 cards. Now that the game is ended, we are going to revisit our play area to determine our final score. Each player will score all of their elevators individually, as well as their discard piles. For each elevator, count the number of cards in the color that appears most frequently. Multiply this number by the total number of cards in the column. For example, utilizing this elevator, we see that we have 3 red cards, which is more than the 2 pink and the 1 green. So we'll be using red for this example. We are going to multiply the 3 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, getting 18 points for that elevator. This elevator only has 2 cards, and unfortunately the colors don't match up, so it'll be 2 times 1, gaining 2 points. This elevator has 1 point. Adding those up gets us 21 points total from our elevators. Then we add the 1, 2, 3 discarded cards from the previously discarded elevator, bringing our final score to 24. After all players have calculated their final scores, everybody compares their final scores, and the person with the highest score wins. And that's how you play up or down. I have really enjoyed this game, and I hope that you will too. Thank you for allowing me to teach you.